and spend 7 weeks with them. And part of this was the generosity of the people of Butte, and we really thank you for helping us support our programs. We try to do things that are in keeping with social justice, and we did a scholarship program in Africa, and there'll be more information about all of that. We only have an hour, and I know a lot of you just have a lunchtime, so we'll zoom through this, and then some of us will stay afterwards and can answer questions and all, but I know some of you have to leave at 1, so. You already know that. So of course we're in South Africa, and this is...
Do you have a microphone?
You know what, I'll get you up. You keep talking.
I'll try to talk louder. Apartheid and you know, the horrible situation there, and then the people of South Africa themselves really took the world by storm and managed to win their freedom. There's still a lot of work to do there, but they're very proud people, very gracious people, very generous people. We got to Nongoma, which is where our sister radio station, Nongoma-FM, is. And this is on there, it says, was officially opened by His Majesty King Goodwill on the 1st of June, 2015. Coincidentally, that's when KBMF first started.
Oh, wow.
We didn't know that before. The night we arrived at Sago's house, which is where we were staying, he had rented this huge tent and a sound system, and there was a giant party. You could see Clark there and Mokai, their silhouettes. This is what it... Oh, wait, I'll clip that onto your sweater. Can you hear better now? I have to turn you on. Can you hear better now? There you go. Now I'm scared. Okay, are we good? Yep. Okay, I keep screaming along here. So this is what it looked like every morning when we were in Nongoma. It was incredibly beautiful. It's about the same size, the Nongoma municipality, as Silver Bow County, but we have 34,000 people all in one town. They have nearly 200,000 spread out across it in little family compounds. This was the house we stayed in. It was very common to have these pillars and a square house, and the one on the right, Sago's building for himself. This one was on the side. So they have both traditional and the other. This was the front yard. This was my favorite chicken. It had 8 chicks, but really only one was alive when we left. After 7 weeks, yeah. This is Sago's sister, Snow, with Mokai, and we love her. We want her to live here. She's amazing. And this is Sago's mother, who I fell in love with, and she told me to call her Jabu, which means sister, and so I do and did and will forever. There were a lot of kids. Oh, cute. And but the one on the far right is Sago's daughter. Her name's Amahle, and they don't get cuter. Although they try. Oh. And this little boy was in the house that we were staying in a lot. He lived nearby. He's actually an orphan. And this is what the living room looked like when he was sitting there before we painted it and moved in our recording equipment. And Clark very graciously and generously recorded a lot of people from there. And these are just some of the photos of some of the people being recorded. Oh yeah. Oh. Anyway, and they were all exactly like this, smiling, friendly. We were the only white people. We were the only white people anywhere ever, and but everybody was so nice to us. It was unbelievable. This is Kekelo and Masomi, and he was one of the 3 gentlemen who came and spent the summer in Butte. And this is actually a very sad photo. His mother died 2 days after we arrived in Africa, and this was at the funeral. And he's now solely responsible for his son and 2 brothers right there. And so, I don't know, maybe Butte can help somehow. He needs help. We love him. This is some of his family, Matt and I hanging with the babes. Come. So, Sago's mom made ceremonial beer for us out of cornmeal, and she cooked it in that pot. I love that pot. This is at Shishinyama, which is a car wash, which is where our favorite food was. You'll notice in these photos, everybody's really sparkly clean, like all the clothes are like super clean, they're really into that. And the cars are really shiny and clean, which means they have to take them to the car wash all the time. And that means that they don't really have, so you're there for a while. So you go and you find a window, there will be meat that you can choose, and then you wait for your car. These are actually dishes that were cooked by Mokai's sister. He was one of the gentlemen who visited. She gave me this ceremonial hat. She wore it on her wedding. I can't believe she gave it to me. But the dishes were the same almost everywhere, whether we were eating with the king or the chiefs or at funerals or weddings. You would have like a stew in the lower part. There was cream spinach, sweet potatoes, kind of a pork and bean thing with cut up hot dogs. And then, my favorite, chicken feet. They really did taste good. I wasn't as happy with the ox head because I never knew if I was chewing a piece of lip or a brain gland. This was a market that took place once a month in Nongoma. Very colorful, very colorful. This was the witch doctor's booth. That was the witch doctor. It kind of scared me a little bit. There were no fences, and so there were animals in the road all the time. But this was a lot of animals. Yeah. There were also other animals alongside the road. As we would leave Nongoma to head south down toward the coast, we would drive through Africa's oldest game reserve. You don't need to ride in fancy-ass safari wagons or anything. You just drive along, and there they are. That's Matt's hand. That one wasn't real, but it's adorable. Huh? And it was life-size. It was really, really big. Wow. It was just by the side of the road. A guy was making them and selling them. This is a friend of mine.
Oh, gosh, how cool.
Here's Mokai and Sabo and Clark at the beach. Here are the boys.
Oh.
They're totally scorched. So the living room is essentially a burn ward. This is how I managed not to get sunburned. Thank you to Clark for the photo. I appreciate it. This was in Swaziland, but it's the traditional housing. You can see what it was like when we went to visit there. They call them kraals, K-R-A-A-Ls. You can see the craftsmanship on these buildings. It was incredible. These are beautiful, beautiful still. This one's at where a great number of the Zulu kings are buried, and you can see how big it is. And these were ceremonial huts. We went to the cradle of mankind. You know, Africa is where we are all from. That's where the earliest hominids are from, and this was a magnificent museum that has a lot. So this, we bought the sheep. When we visited the king, we had to buy the king a cow, and when we visited chiefs, we had to buy lambs. And this one was for Her Majesty. She's a chief, and so she's the one in the black head right there. She had invited us to this event, and she said,
"Come on in.
So you can sit with me, it'll be more comfortable." As you can see, we're the only ones sitting. Again and again while we were there, people just went out of their way to make us feel more than welcome, like really very special. They were doing this crazy dance. Definitely can't show you what it looks like, but they would throw a leg and it would go straight up, like practically over their shoulder. It was called Nongoma. And here are some of the Nongoma dancers who really wanted their photo with Clark. Here we are at a ball game. We were the only white people there, so of course we were on the big screen. I particularly liked that there was Zulu drumming going on throughout the entire game. That was pretty cool. This is Christmas Day. That's what we did on Christmas. We'd been invited to see the king, but you know, we'd rather be with our friends. So we stayed home. This is New Year's Eve. Wow. Again, no white people. It was a fantastic night. It was like all night long. It was super crazy. It was crazy. This is one of those many sisters. It's very complicated there. You know, especially in the royal circles, there are many wives. So there are many children, and what gets called brother or sister or cousin is variable. We visited a lot of radio stations. This is Rise FM. We met them the night of the, when we went to the New Year's Eve party. This is Nongoma-FM. They're fairly new and young, but super dedicated. They're really into education and all. This is my favorite anyway, Maputo land. And they do amazing things, like they have a whole educational arm, and also they go around and they collect musicians who don't really have an outlet for their music generally, and they have this bus and they carry them around to the big hotels and stuff where they can play music and get money. And so, plus they record them and put out compilations. That was really great. And this was the goodbye party night at the house. It was a dance fest for the ages. Then the very last day we were there, we got tattoos. Mine says Butte Nongoma forever. But anyway, you can read it for yourself. Shop rules are for. Anyway, I can tell you're reading it because you're laughing. And then the last thing, I made everybody, I convinced them, they were nice enough to humor me, to go around looking for street art in Johannesburg just before we left. And I have about 60 of these photos up on
Oh my goodness.
Facebook and Flickr and all, and you can see them. This one was the crown jewel.
Wow.
Anyway, the last thing I'll say, this was on a big monument in one of the game preserves, and if it certainly sums up how to do right with the world. And KBMF wants to do right. We went to Standing Rock 3 times last year, and now this year to Africa. When I just want to point something out though. We went to the Crow Reservation, and our friend Third gave me this bracelet when we were at the Crow festival, and Mokai's sister gave me this one, and so I don't know, I almost weep at the beauty and enjoying that. And I just wanted to say one last thing, and that's that they have this concept called Ubuntu, and it means basically being kind to everyone and judging later, deciding whether or not to like somebody, being open first. And it was a beautiful thing, and so I was very grateful to have got to spend time there. I thank all of you for your support. KBMF is the best thing that happened to me, maybe in my life. I don't know, it's incredible. My show, Radio Free Zarka, is Saturdays 4 to 6. And I play all kinds of music, so you might even like something. Thank you so much. Because that's what you did. Keep going. Keep trying. I can't see it. There we go.
Okay. How's that? I'll talk like this. All right. The clicker is in my pocket. All right. Okay. I'm just going to start out by kind of giving you a little overview of our operation. I know a lot of you are very familiar with KBMF or volunteer there, but I also wanted to kind of give some context about why we made this trip, how we made it, and then what I did most when we were down there. What I enjoyed doing most was learning as much EC Zulu as I could, so I wanted to do a little group participation thing at some point here in my presentation. But so my name is Clark Grant, and I'm the general manager of KBMF. We're over in the Carpenter's Union Hall, and we went on the air. We turned our transmitter on June 1st, 2015, after about 3 years of organizing and fundraising. I'm sure many of you in this room donated in that initial push to get the station on the air. It cost us about $20,000. And we're what's called a low power FM station, so we're 100 watts, we're non-commercial, we're educational. And so it's a public access station But we're different than NPR. We're not NPR. We're not public radio. We're what you call community radio. And so on June 1st, 2015, we turned our transmitter on. That just so happens to be the exact same day that the king of the Zulu Nation was dedicating Nongoma-FM in Nongoma, South Africa. Of course, we didn't know that at the time. So I think Dark will probably explain a little bit about how we first got in touch with the Zulus, because he was central to that. So I'll leave that part of the story to him if he's going to tell that. But as our station has grown and progressed, and the Butte America Foundation has become a bigger and bigger institution, we've embarked on other projects besides just community radio in Butte. One of them is the renovation of the Carpenter's Union Hall. We also took over the St. Patrick's Day Parade and 4th of July Parade. And after this gentleman named Siboniso Zulu, who's a station manager in Nongoma, South Africa, after he reached out to us saying he wanted to establish a relationship, this has become a new initiative that we call them our global partners. So the Global Partner Initiative. And this picture that you're looking at here is something that I never could have imagined would have happened with a 100-watt station. This is the king of the Zulu Nation. So I'm no expert on the language. I'm no expert on economics or politics of South Africa. So what I'll share with you today is just what I learned firsthand being down there. But a couple different people told me that this guy is the 7th richest person in Africa. So he's a big wig. I don't know why he's hanging out with us. So from the left there, that's, and Suzanne talked about this a little bit, that's Sbo Zulu, S-B-O, Sbo. And he is a prince in the Zulu Nation, but the king is not his father. It's a little different. There are these clans and tribes. And so within municipalities there in the province we were in, which is KwaZulu-Natal, I'm digressing, but South Africa is divided into 9 provinces, and we were in KwaZulu-Natal, which is in the northeast part of the country. And in KwaZulu-Natal, when they rewrote the constitution of the whole country in 1994, they made room for what they call traditional forms of government. So it's basically like a tribal entity would be in the United States. And so Sbo is a prince within a particular clan, and I think he had only met the king a handful of times. So it was a great honor and a huge privilege to be able to meet this man. And we just had a brief conversation with him. Suzanne did most of the talking, luckily. And, so that's Sbo Zulu on the end. And it's really hard to, in the brief time that we have, impress upon you this gentleman's demeanor, his way of operating in life, but I've never met anyone like him. He very much acts like a prince. He just, you know, you go to the bank in Nongoma, the bank manager comes out, Mr. Zulu. And, you go to the car wash, he just cuts in line, or you're walking through the mall and a beautiful woman walks by and Sbo just turns around. He'll go right up to her and talk to her. And anyway, he's just a really dynamic and incredible individual. So that's the gentleman that reached out to us initially and came to Butte and visited. And the gentleman to his right is Mokai Malope, who's actually not Zulu. He's from a different tribe in a different province, but for the sake of simplicity, we just refer to them as the Zulus. And then there I am, and Matt Boyle, and Dark Sevier, and then the King, and Suzanne, and this gentleman's name is Telemusa Welcome. And I could do a whole presentation on him, I feel like. So. But anyway, so there we are, and we got here because we co-wrote a grant to the Ford Foundation. And the grant paid for our travel in order to go down there and establish a scholarship fund. So 8 students in Nongoma that were in high school now have money to go to college, to relocate from the rural area to the city. And we're going to do a similar program here in Butte. And so that really was the reason we were able to make this trip. And it was hard to impress upon people while we were down there that yes, I am white, and yes, I'm from the United States, but I am not rich. But you know, when you don't have water infrastructure or every road going to the houses is a dirt road, it's kind of hard to assure them that you're not rich, because we have those things here, you know, in Butte. And so we are rich in a lot of ways in comparison. These pictures are not in any particular order, but this is right outside the Nongoma-FM radio station. Really characterizes what's going on there. Cows were a constant theme because we had to buy a cow to meet the king, as Suzanne mentioned. But Sbo's mom one time told me, the cows are in the bank. So it's just, cow is a way of just saying money, basically. I never did see the cow we gave the king, although I assume it happened. But I definitely saw the money. So we went to church one day, and the United Methodist Church of South Africa has these enormous congregations, and you can see all the women in the red outfits with the white. And that the origins of this church we were reading comes from British soldiers who were stationed in South Africa in the 1860s. So they almost look like redcoats in that church. But that was a really great service. I've been to church a fair number of times, but I enjoyed this much more than most other services I've been to. This is the Nongoma countryside. Gives you an idea of what it looks like in the surrounding area. Their radio station has quite a reach. They're 10 times more powerful than we are at 1,000 watts, and their tower is enormous. So they have a huge reach, and a lot of their listening area looks like this. So a lot of cows listening. The tired prince. This is a theme throughout the whole trip, really. Just sleep anytime you can, because we're going to stay up all night. These kids, I think he's 28 years old. They're all in their kind of late 20s. I'm only 31, but I felt like an old man. Because these guys know how to party. And that was, I guess, what you call the cultural exchange. This guy was almost as tall as Dark. And we didn't really see very many other people that were. Yeah, but that was a really fun day. That dance, traditional dance that we went to called Nongoma. And this was all, every day was something new. It was all part of the cultural exchange. And I would describe it as well as a professional exchange, because we did get to go to their radio station and visit other radio stations and see how they operate. You know, and KBMF is really founded on access. Our radio station is about providing access to the people of Butte. So if you want to come get a radio show and you've never touched a mixing board, you've never been on a microphone, you're welcome to come in the door and do it. At Nongoma-FM, it's a little different. They're very slick, very commercial. Everybody that's there is extremely adept with all the equipment. And I would say the average age there is probably under 30, whereas on our station it's probably over 55. And so we definitely have a different approach, and it was interesting to see how they do things in comparison with KBMF. So this is on the day that we were leaving, and very sad day. And Spo's mom, Suzanne touched on a little bit, her kindness is just overwhelming. She washed all of our laundry by hand.
Wow.
She made food for us. They moved out of their house into a neighboring house in order for us to have a place to stay. You know, for 6 weeks, or 5 weeks we were in Nongoma.
Wow.
And so her maiden name is Inzlunkulu, and that's what she preferred that I refer to her as. I didn't call her Jabu, but Inzlunkulu is her name, Vilagaz, and she would come find you and demand to get your laundry. I remember we had been there for a couple of weeks, and she came in and asked where my laundry was, and I said, I don't have any, and she goes, that can't be true. All right, here's my underwear. So she was very kind, very kind. It was really amazing to meet her. And then this is Spo's daughter, Amasle. We had a theme with her where anytime she would get airtime on her cell phone, you have to buy airtime in increments, she would just blow through all our airtime calling us. We'd be like in the same house, and she would call us. Amasle!
Why your phone is on?
Pick your phone up.
She's great. She's a wonderful little kid. This is Suzanne saying goodbye to Amasle. And I think the cultural exchange will continue. There's plans for more Zulu folks to come back to Butte in September this year, and we hope to go back down there. And it's all just a matter of finances, you know, for most of us involved. They're not rich, we're not rich. The grant is what made us able to go down there. So there'll be more. I mean, who knew that Butte would connect with a Zulu radio station? I don't know, but Butte is a magnificent place with a lot of very generous people, and so is Nongoma. So in that sense, it makes sense. So I just wanted to do one bit on the language, and then I'll be done. We're about on time here. Okay. So in Zulu, I studied language in college, so it was really fun to sit around and listen and try and pick up as much as I could. One of the first words that we learned when we were down there was umlungu, and Suzanne mentioned that word, and that means white man. And so you'd be driving down the road and you could hear people yell, Umlungu! And so I didn't learn a ton, you know, probably 80 words and phrases, but I started to get to where I could form sentences by the time we were leaving. And so another one it's kind of like if you're learning French, you need to know je ne sais pas, I don't know.
Right.
And so in Zulu, Isi Zulu, that's ongazi. And so if someone asks you a question, you could just say, Ngimi umlungu, ongazi. You know, I'm a white guy, I don't know. Another one of my favorite words was crazy. So crazy is oluslanya. And so Dark would be meeting with people or something, and I'd walk up to him and I would tell him, beware, this is an umlungu oluslanya, a crazy white man. And then Dark would just go, Didn't know what I was saying. But, and then tando is the verb for to love. And so that was another one that I learned down there and used a lot. And so, you know, in language, when you conjugate verbs, you know, like I am, you are, we are, they are. In isiZulu, ingia is I, that's how you conjugate a verb. So ingia tanda would be I love, and ingia tanda wena is I love you. And so, ingia tanda chisa nyama means I love barbecue. That's another important one. Ingia tanda Nongoma. Or you could say Mzansi it means South Africa. So you could say Ingia tanda Mzansi. And anytime I got to go on the radio, I would be sure and get that one in. And then people would that one. But one of the things I wanted to do, is my phone there? Thank you. I did this at one of our DJ get-togethers. I want to do it again. One thing, because Spo is a royal clan member, the clan that he belongs to is called Ndabezita, and so that's, I don't have a whiteboard, otherwise I'd write it down, but this is what I'd like to say together. So when a prominent figure like a chief, which is in Kosi, would come into a room when you're having a formal meeting, you salute that person by saying, and I'll show you the salute now, and then I'd like to do it together, and then I'll pass it off to Matt. So they say the chief would come into the room, and you would say, Ndabezita, Ndabezita, and then you say, Wena Waslanga. So let's practice it. Yeah, it looks like we're doing it right now, probably. Okay, so can you say this after me? Ndabezita.
Ndabezita.
Nice. So we're going to say that one twice, and then we'll say Wena Waslanga. That'll do. So we'll say Ndabezita twice, and then Wena Waslanga. Okay, you ready? Ndabezita, Ndabezita, Wena Waslanga. Thank you so much.
So my name is Matt Boyle. I'm one of the founding board members of Butte America Foundation, which is the licensee holder of KBMF 102.5. I was also very fortunate and grateful to be able to have my first out-of-the-country experience, and with these fine people right here. I've got about 42 pictures. I was there for 40 days. I arrived 5 days after them because I had some other stuff to do back home. And so, hey Madison, I see you. And so this is basically each day, just kind of one picture from each day. There's a few pictures that were from one day, so it's not technically every 40 days, but we're just going to take you through things. This was when the crew left from the parking lot, just down there on Granite Street. There we go. This was the first sort of image I saw as soon as I was out of the airport and they picked me up and we were driving. This was the first thing I saw in Johannesburg on the highway. And clearly it's a lot of smaller shacks, much different than the ones that we were staying in Nongoma. Clearly a little more poverty in this area. And so that was the very first image off the plane. And then this was the house we were staying in Tembisa. This is Mokai's house. And you got the nice fence there, really nice inside, running water, shower, all that stuff. And then this is what you see when you wake up in the morning and you walk out of the house. This is kind of your view. This is the neighborhood we were in. Really nice neighborhood, a lot of dogs around. Various neighbors would come to talk and meet with us every day and have dinner. Clark would do guitar exchange lessons here and there with Mokai and Sekele, another gentleman who we would come to meet and talk with quite a bit. And so this is just in the front yard of Tembisa here, which is just outside of Johannesburg. And then when we finally got the call that we could meet the king, and that we were going to drive to Nongoma at 4 in the morning, we hopped in the car, and as you're driving into Nongoma, you leave the city, and then it's just like a 2-lane highway for a while, and then all of a sudden, it's all these hills with tons of trees and all these houses spread out all across the land, and it's really, really beautiful. Kind of reminds me of home. Definitely not as many trees here as they do there, and all the thick brush and stuff, but I mean, you get on top of one hill and you see all these other hills for days, and it's beautiful. So of course, then we met the king, and you know, it was an unreal experience. I don't think any of us had really slept for like 36 hours or so before meeting him, because we were doing so much traveling, and they picked me up from the airport. We left at 3 in the morning. We were like 4 hours late for this event. And thankfully, he was still willing to meet us after showing up. And then after we met the king, we drove into the place where we were staying. And this is at the radio station. It was a sign the DJs had made for us. Welcome to our friends. Some of the stuff had blown off there. There was another message on the other side there, too. And so then Suzanne showed a picture of the house that we were staying in. And when you walk out of the house, this is kind of the first thing you see. So this is, you know, there's little neighbors there, nice big yard, and, you know, more hills rolling all over. And then if you kind of look to your left, you know, this was kind of the other view. I think every day that we were there, that we weren't passed out before the sunset, you know, we were always, you know, right at this spot, staring at that zone, watching the sunset. It's gorgeous. This is the Drakensberg Mountains, which was about a 3-hour drive away from Nongoma. And I kept saying when we were driving in, it's like Lord of the Rings. It's just, it's such an incredible landscape and sharp, jagged rocks and mountains. And this photo doesn't even do the mountains justice. What's that?
11,000 feet high.
11,000 feet high.
Wow.
And so this is Senele. This is Spo's brother. And the other guy there is Umlando. Really good guys. Senele is very much into trying to motivate the youth and bring about some jobs and things like that. Him and Spo also co-own like a media company where they release newspapers. They call them magazines over there. But it's like a free newspaper that anybody can get. And then this was at our first pre-wedding ceremony that we went to. And basically, it's the bridesmaids are out there, and they're in this very traditional gear, and they all have a reed, and they bring the reed out to somebody in the crowd, they put it in front of them, and then you have to dance it back. And as soon as we showed up, they found their people. And so this is our friend Welcome, who we mentioned. He was kind of one of our guides and liaisons anytime we were doing something that had royal affiliation. If we were meeting one of the chiefs or if we were meeting the king, Welcome was going to be the one to tell us when we could go, when we can't, if we can wear a tie, if we need to put on a jacket. Super nice guy, very friendly, and I loved his own.
Yeah.
And so as Suzanne said, there's kids everywhere. There was one morning where I was taking a nap, and Amakle, the little girl, Spo's little girl, she comes in my room, she says, I want you to meet my friend. I said, oh yeah, bring her in. And all of them come one by one, and so I'm slowly waking up from this nap. And I'm like, holy cow, a bunch of you. So next thing I know, I had 12 kids standing around. It was great. And this was the other time Dark met his match. It's another fellow tall man, just was strolling in the neighborhood. You heard the Americans were there, and turns out he got a match. It says Owami is his name. This is Spo's brother's son, and his father actually committed suicide. So like Suzanne was saying, he's an orphan. He lives with Spo's grandmother, and he also will transition into Spo's mother's house and stay with them here and there. Really sweet kid. Loves taking pictures. This is a Mothray, beautiful little girl, Spo's daughter. We're always taking selfies. This was when we went to the beach, one of 4 times. Very nice, beautiful view. It's only the 2nd time I've ever been to the ocean. It's Indian Ocean, very warm. This is Spo, covered in a blanket, sleeping, which I thought it was funny at the time, and I got dark too. But then it turns out if you don't do that, you're gonna get burnt pretty good, so my bad. This was driving through one of the game reserves, and this is a river that was running through the place, and it's just incredible, incredible view, clearly very brown water. This is the squad taking a peek at it. This was after this event in Goma. We were driving on the road, and we saw a group of, it was I think 11 or 12 girls, and they just saw us in the car, and they lost it. They were just smiling, and they're waving their arms, and so we're like, we should pull over and talk to them. And this was the result.
Oh, how cute.
And then we had some dance lessons one day. This is a woman who graduated with Spo's mother, and she was very outgoing that day. She was doing all sorts of dances, and so she asked Suzanne to dance, and then she got Dark to dance. And so, oh, okay, that's okay. And so this is, we visited 3 radio stations. This is Nongoma-FM. All the radio stations that we visited were all designed by the same person, same company, and it's a very sleek design, very nice. Makes ours look like a Cracker Jack box. But I mean, it's really, really nice, and you know, I can't say enough good things about it and their programming and things like that. This was our last day at Nongoma-FM. This is right before we drove to Johannesburg to go to Tembisa to stay at that house a couple days before we flew out. So we're just kind of saying our goodbyes, getting our pictures in the Nongoma-FM shirts. These are the scholarship recipients. These are just 5 of them, 5 of the 8 who were receiving the scholarship that we got to meet and kind of get a little one-on-one time with and hear what they were talking about. And they're all very motivated. And of all 5 of these ones, you know, we met a lot of people in Nongoma who said they want to go to the city. We want to go to the city because there's nothing to do. Well, these guys want to go to college, you know, in the city, but then they want to come back and, you know, either start law firms, which there's no law firm in Nongoma, or they want to start, you know, all various things. They want to build buildings, and all of these kids walk anywhere from 5 kilometers to 15 kilometers every day, back and forth just to get to school.
Wow.
And so, of course, like we were saying, you're driving down the road, and there's a giraffe. And then Suzanne was saying this is, it's kind of sacred ground. This was a hut that one of the kings used to live in. There was also some battles that had taken place on this land. And the reason the hut has such a small door was to make it hard for enemies to get in. And so, you know, once they were kind of sneaking in, get them. But found a little piece of home while we were out there. This is the Montana Bar in Nongoma. Who would have thought? We went to church. My mother and father, I know, were very happy I went to church. And it was one of those things, you know, every time we showed up to any sort of event, we were treated very graciously, and we kind of wanted to you know, put us center stage. And so when we showed up to church, we were probably sitting back here, but then they saw us and they're like, oh, you guys are our guests, you know, come on the stage. And it's the first Mass of the year, essentially, because this was right after the New Year, and it's one of the biggest Masses in Nongoma. the priests from all the other neighboring communities come in, and they have a nice big celebration. And we bought some suits to meet the king, because you can't meet the king without a suit. You literally cannot if you're not a part of the Zulu culture. And so this was when, just after Mass, Clark and Dark looking nice and stuck in their suits. And this preacher, he would emphasize his talk so much and he'd be just dripping sweat. So this is our last day at the house that Spo's mother and them had moved out that we could stay in. Swagged out in our Nongoma gear. This was some of the street art that Suzanne was talking about that we went and saw.